So I think then we start. We have so welcome everyone. So I know that you're from the different parts of the world to this webinar, and this is the intention is not that it should be like a webinar and presentation and more like one-way presentation communication. So the idea here is that we will share experiences on how to make more usefulness from the research, and that is a tricky thing. So then we share experiences from people. So today we have two distinguished guests with the different types of experience from research and innovation and going to commercialization. So those aspects we will have. And at the end, please ask some questions so we can have an interaction by that, either if you have a particular question about the details here, or if you have any own inquiry how to commercialize things, because the main aim is that we should share experiences, and some of those might be useful for other people when they do some activity. So that is the main purpose of this webinar, or sharing, or whatever we call it. And this is organized by NANOSMAT, and I came into contact with NANOSMAT last year, so it was not so many years ago, but I've heard about it longer than that. But then I was at a conference and having very nice exchange, and people were so friendly and so on, so I continued to work with NANOSMAT. And then we actually had one session in sharing experiences in Abu Dhabi. So that was the first test, but in a real meeting. So there was a lot of discussion and interaction. And now during these times, when we have physical limitations to travel and all those things, then we are now trying this concept of webinar to sharing experiences. So this is informal, and Erik just showed how informal this can be, because it should be over a coffee discussion type of thing. So, and the person behind the NANOSMAT has created different types of activities. So Nasar Ali is also participating. So maybe you can say a few words about NANOSMAT and your vision about this activity.
Okay, thank you very much, Mikael. I'm sorry you're not able to see me, although I don't know, I think my camera, there's some issues, but you do see one of my old photos where I look a bit more younger, looking a bit more older now. But anyway, we would like to welcome you all to this innovation webinar. We had announced this approximately 3-4 weeks ago, and since then we've had over 300 people who have registered, and these have been people from, I was just counting early this morning, around 27 countries of the world. And just to sort of mention some of these: Algeria, Australia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Canada, Ecuador, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Ireland, Japan, Madagascar, Mexico, Morocco, Nigeria, Pakistan, Portugal, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Sweden, Tunisia, Turkey, Uganda, UK, USA. So it's, and NANOSMAT has always had a very international theme. Even the conferences that we've been holding for over 15 years or so, we have attracted people from all over the world, and so that we get people, because as scientists, you know, we speak one language, and that is to come together and to exchange experiences, knowledge, technical know-how, in order to overcome some of the challenges that we face in this world. So it's good that we're having people from all over the world here joining us. And since the lockdown and since this COVID-19, Obviously, it's been very, very difficult for us to work in a way that we're used to working. However, you know, when they say when one door closes, another door opens. And I think since that we have this technology and utilizing this technology that we have, such as this Zoom, we're able to continue, and we must continue. We must not, the science and the work must not stop here. So it's a good opportunity that we're coming together. And as Mikael mentioned, we have in the past, last year, we've started these webinars on innovation, this nanocapacity innovation and beyond. And the last one that was held in the NANOSMAT conference was in Abu Dhabi in December, I believe, 2019. We were planning for the next one to be held in Manchester this September. But however, because of the COVID-19 situation, in particular in the UK, we are suffering quite heavily where there's a lot of loss of life. And it's probably in the world per 1 million people, the most number of deaths and infections. So we have had to postpone our Manchester NanoSmart conference, and we will be holding it as a virtual conference. And hopefully in that as well, Mikael will be there. And amongst other topics, there will be this topic of innovation and capacity. So and these NanoSmart webinars, there will be a series of webinars on these different topics, including innovation. So it's great, and I'm really looking forward to this webinar. And we do have Mikael, who will be speaking and also chairing this session. And it's good to see our two panelists, Dr. Imran and Dr. Erik, who are here. So I'm very, very excited about listening and seeing how this goes. And do please bear in mind that this is actually streamed live on our Facebook page. And then later on, we will be uploading this recording onto our NanoSmart YouTube channel, where you could see other stuff as well. So it's great to have you with us. And I hope that you will continue to join us for our different programs. And at NanoSmart Global, we are focusing on events which are going to be physical meetings, hopefully from 2021 onwards, once this COVID-19 situation is pretty much under control. And then we also have we'll continue with the virtual events. And then we have e-learning, we will have an institute, innovation, and then publishing. So we would be sending you email of our website, which you can see and learn a bit more about what we're about and what sort of work we are involved with, so that you can take part as well and participate. So I think without further ado, and webinars, we are going to try to see we can keep this quite short, because we don't want you to be staring in front of screens for too long. So I think Mikael will elaborate on this, but around from 45 minutes to an hour. So I think I'll pass over to Mikael, and thank you very much once again for you all for joining us today. Mikael?
Yes, yeah, great. Thank you for that introduction. And also, we have in the panel list, we have Mohammed Kemfuch. So I met him at the conference, and it was nice discussions and so on. And he's also involved in these activities. So at the end, we might ask him to share some of the ideas on the e-learnings and so on, which he has been initiating and is skilled in. So that is also another way of how to share insights and experiences and having knowledge, which is when you cannot go to the physical meetings, you can have something online and so on. So he's very good at that. So at this presentation, this exchange, we have two distinguished speakers who will share the experiences. So I will start with asking Muhammad Imran Asghar from Aalto University, Finland, and Hubei University in China to say a little bit about his background and experience. And then I will ask Erik to do similar. And then I will share something, and then we will start the knowledge things. So please, Imran, say some words about your research.
Thank you very much, Mikael and Dr. Nasser, for inviting me here for this webinar. So my background is, I have quite multidisciplinary background, and currently I'm focusing on nanocomposite fuel cells. I have two positions at the moment. I'm Academy Research Fellow at Aalto University, and I have this 5 years project funded by Academy of Finland, where I'm focusing on fabrication of ceramic nanocomposite fuel cells with advanced digital printing methods. And before that, I did my doctoral degree in dye-sensitized solar cells, and I've been working in industry in a startup company for 1 year, but also in a large company for 1 year. And so I have experience from industry and also from academia. And I have some experience of bringing university research into commercialization in the past. And so I'm originally from Pakistan, did my bachelor's in robotics, then working on solar energy, and now working on fuel cells. And the battery is also one area where I have been working on. So that's my short background.
Yes, thank you very much. And it's I like these ones when you have different previous experiences which you sort of combine, and that becomes a unique way for each of us when we combine it in some way, and then we match somewhere, somehow, in a nice way. So that's what we are trying to find. So thank you very much. And the second contributor here is Erik. So Khranovskyy. So he's from GRAFREN AB. So he's devoted to the commercialization activity. He has background in research. So Erik, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. So I break in, and yes, Dr. Mikael, Dr. Nazar, thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you, NANOSMAT. I'm Erik Khranovskyy. I'm CEO of the company called GRAFREN at present. Also, I am a researcher at Linköping University. I'm associated professor there. And I think that for the last 5 years, I got my PhD degree in 2009. And then for the last 5 years, what I'm doing is I'm working on, I'm not working on the classic research anymore. I'm not writing the articles. What we do, we commercialize the results. We do the research, but then we go one step further. So we do make the research, or like bring the research to the real life, or at least we try. And I have a number of both successful and unsuccessful. Actually, I have much more fails than successful.
Yeah, we all know.
Yeah. So thank you.
Great. So I think now I will, let's see. Yes. So my name is Mikael Syväjärvi. So I'm also from the Linköping University, Sweden, and I have been some experiences in starting up companies and technology transfer and so on. So now I will a little bit introduce the purpose very briefly. So let's see if I can make, now it should be a larger picture. So today we will talk about nanocapacity, and capacity is basically how to make more usefulness in different ways. And we go from the innovation, and since we are in the nanotechnology, it will be long-term impact. And my background is that when I was a PhD student, I developed the method for silicon carbide for making growth of thick films for power devices. So that was quite successful. We had these thick films of silicon carbide with good quality and so on. But it was not pure enough. So it was not useful for the power devices. So it could not convert because there were impurities in that one. So that method was the highlight of my thesis, 1999. So it was a method which was totally useless for its purpose. And then a few years later came Satoshi Kamiyama from Mayo University, and he was interested in silicon carbide thick layers with certain impurities, because then you can get light out from the silicon carbide. So it was a new type of research. So that's how this research finding came into an avenue, and then it was technology transfer for our process to Japan, and now it's being developed further if there will be fundings. But that's how I first got into the interest in making usefulness from the research findings. It was thanks to this failed mistake of making a method, which then a few years later had its place in the world. And my second experience is related to silicon carbide. So when we grow silicon carbide, the silicon and carbon atoms go to the vapor, and sometimes there is more silicon to the vapor than carbon. So this is very bad for the growth, but that was actually how we came into graphene. So when we had one layer of carbon on silicon carbide, then we had the graphene on silicon carbide. So that's how we came into that avenue. And then there was a lot of interest in the material. So researchers were asking for samples, and we distributed samples faster and faster, and then we could not manage to keep projects. And then we were thinking, how can we get rid of these free samples and so on. Then we started a company in 2011 in graphene on silicon carbide. So that's how we made an own startup. And I had my first experience in setting up such activity. But that's how I got into this field more and more. And I was involved in sales activities and part-time working for company and so on. And later, a few years, they came the graphene flagship and the Swedish graphene program, which means that there's a roadmap, a bigger thinking of how to position the research findings into a larger context. So that's what the graphene flagship is about, and other programs which are now running in the world. And also internationally, there's an interest in technology transfer from materials and so on. So I have some of those experiences also. So now I have been shifting, like Erik, I don't write papers any longer, so I'm shifting towards such things. So that's my experience. And in addition, for those who are from Europe, European Commission now has the smart specialization strategy, which means that regions should focus on some things where they are stronger, and then they should build collaboration and network. And basically what they are building is a value chain. And in technology, we're building value chain from material to application to system and so on. So these things are in parallel. So I think now if we position our research findings into larger contexts, not only value chains, but also these regional things, then we can have more opportunities, especially for the long-term implementation. And I know a little bit about these things because I was involved in a working group from 2013. And then what is actually happening is that regions should focus on the strengths. And now comes the second phase, where regions should collaborate to do these things in Europe. And also, of course, the next step after that will be collaboration internationally about these things. So these are some aspects of how to create more capacities, not only the technological or the business or the economy when you count how big is the market and how are the predicted sales and so on, because some of these things we don't know, especially like in graphene or the fuel cells, then no one has an idea about what is the market because it's so into the future and so many things still happen. But if we do these things together and combine in different ways, then it will be much bigger impact. And also, just a last example, what is happening is that most of you will know about the Nobel Prize for the blue LED 2014 in physics. So that they got, so Professor Amano was at the European MRS conference, and he was talking about that. Yes, the blue LED, and it got commercialized, and then you got the white LED, and then you have a big business. But it took more than 30 years. And now the investors at the local governments, what they want is that they want this to happen in less than 10 years. And he said, oh, it's not possible, of course, but so on. But then they started to have actual programs for these things, to encourage students to become entrepreneurs when they want it, and also how to develop production technologies. It's not only the research findings and so on. So they have programs for these things with mentors and internships. So I think this is a good example how something can be put into a bigger perspective. But at the end, all these things, they originate from our findings. So when you're a PhD student and you're doing the first findings, then maybe you will not succeed. But then it comes to another opportunity later on when things have matured or in different ways. So the science and technology is the core thing about these things. So that's my main background motivation about this, what capacity is about, and no one can know about this. So now I think we go to a little bit more practical things, and we have some examples from Imran and Erik about what did they have most useful from when moving ahead in this aspect, or what would be their recommendation, what was a good hint. So who would like to start? You can offer, both of you, to be the first one at the first webinar, the premiere.
Maybe I can start. I think that it's very important to realize from the very beginning what you are doing. I mean, in your research, we all are smart and so on, and science is great. But there is a clear difference between, let's say, research-oriented mind, when your goal is research and more research and more research, and that's great because you create the value, you create the intellectual value, and you make the basis for the innovations. But then at certain point, if you understand that you would like to take this piece of innovation or innovation step, and you would like to bring it further, to make it a product, or at least to verify if there can be a product out of that, then you should completely change your mindset from being a researcher, because the aim of research is even more research. You make, I'll say, you complete it, you make a summary, and like the great work always opens up the new possibilities for even more research. When you work on the product, you have to be very, let's say, clear with your aim, what you have to reach, and then you have really to change your mindset from laboratory oriented, from research oriented, to the market oriented. And that's completely different questions that you, as still being a researcher, you have to put for yourself. I'll probably stop here and we'll continue later.
Yeah, that is and I know one thing. I remember one guy who was a PhD student at the same time as me, and then he started that company working with manufacturing of material. So he said that actually he got more insights into the physics from being at the company using many machines at the same time than during the PhD. So I think that is also a good way how to get feedback from other avenues. And Imran has been at the industry, so he has been working there at a bigger company, not startups like in our case. We are small startups and so on. So he has a bigger perspective. So what is your reflection and recommendation and so on?
Yeah, so basically I work in both. Like after my PhD, I was working in a startup company for 1 year, and later I get the chance to work in a larger company. So from my perspective is about this, is like we need to understand that structural changes on the nanoscale affect the performance on the macro scale. So it's all about the nanostructural engineering, which can affect on the macro scale and which can have different applications there. So I always try to do a systematic research on the nanoscale level and try to see the application of those nanomaterials for different applications. So since my area is more on clean energy technologies, and what I have seen, it is good to have a broader perspective. Sometimes one mistake which often these researchers do is like they are focusing only on their specific area. So what I would suggest is to have a broader perspective, because sometimes like these nanomaterials, they can have applications in different areas. And also like I would suggest like researchers to go for conferences which are not very specific conference on one specific topic. One thing that I really like about this NANOSMAT conferences, nano energy conferences, like is that it's quite broad. They cover a wide range of applications of these nano energy materials. And the main advantage there is that you get lots of ideas and you develop your networks with people who are working in different areas of expertise and different applications. And there you get new ideas. For instance, in my case, I did my bachelor's in robotics and I was working on image processing. And when I was doing my doctoral degree, there I realized that the color of these solar cells, they change when they degrade. And then I invented one method called image processing method to study the lifetime of solar cells. So by the visual changes of solar cells, we can estimate the life, the performance and the stability of solar cells. So it's always, I think, this multidisciplinary backgrounds, and I think that really helps a lot. So that's my perspective on this.
Mikael, can I bring the question to the audience? Why do you think, or why do we think we go to the conference? Why do we write articles? Any ideas? I mean, well, we all have ideas, but I mean,
maybe people can who have some suggestion, or they can type that in the chat, because they won't be able to activate.
Yes, please. Yes,
and that is, and also that's one way how to change the thinking, because when we are so used to certain type of areas and we focus on that, and that's natural when we are like PhD students, then we need to focus in order to get our main competence. But then having this other type of experiences is additional next step. So that type of thinking is good to, why are we doing this? We are doing it for the one dissemination thing, but if we are thinking in long term, we're actually doing this to implement the technology. And basically, I think that meeting someone at the conference at some point will make the opportunity. And I can say my experience is that from going to conferences, I get more useful meetings from over coffee or in the evening in the beer than the presentations. Because if I have a coffee and start to talk with someone, then I don't know who they are, but at some point they say something, oh, that's really interesting because it matches. I was not thinking about it, but it makes this. And this is what actually commercialization is about, because we can make a plan and estimated things, but it will not work out like we believe. We need to meet someone where the opportunity emerges, and this is someone else. Especially when it's an early stage like this, like Erik is in the graphene, and there is no market for products, applications. You have material, and then the other things are coming. And in Imran's case, it's even earlier. There is absolutely no market, so it's even earlier. But still, we need to imagine these things. So it's a very good question, because it raises the.
Mikael, can I just add on to your comment? Because when we say there is no market, maybe people should probably understand what does it mean. No market means there is no money. There is no money in this area, which means even if you make a company, you will not get payments for your product. No one will be buying stuff from you. Moreover, you still don't know what you want to sell. You still don't know if they need it. You still don't know if, and many other things. So this is how the innovative business works. Just a short stone. Yeah, we get some answers. Can I continue? We get some answers about why do we need. Why do we need to go to the conference? Why do we need to there was brilliant answers, like to learn from the experience, get new ideas, change knowledge, exchange knowledge, and so on. And they all are right. However, I would put it from the perspective that we want to disseminate our results. We take our research and we bring it to the public. Why do we need that? Because then we have the common knowledge, and that's also the same reason why do we write the articles. The world has to know about our research, because there are researchers who are creating this, and there are, let's call them whatever, doers, the companies, the corporations, who will pay attention to that and who would like to, they have the experience how to take the research and how to make it a product out of that. They have already a market, they know how to do it. So this is extremely important. Just a short example for you. For example, you remember what was the Nobel Prize this year? What was the Nobel Prize granted for? That was lithium-ion batteries, right? The research about that has been done how many years ago? 30, 40, something like that. So it's a huge delay. It's a huge delay if we work with real innovations, including, let's say, nanomaterial. And the same thing, for example, the previous, a few years ago, the Nobel Prize was for the LEDs, right? And that's the same. The research has been done 20, 30 years ago. So it's a huge, huge delay. And that's why we need to write the articles, to report our results, and to share our vision. And then if we are, how to say, strong enough, brave enough, and sometimes silly enough, we can put together our muscles and try to commercialize our result by ourselves. And that's another story. Then when that's
many different
stop to be the researcher and you become the businessman. Thank you.
Yes. So it should be, no one should be forced to do it. You should do what you're interested in. If it's research, you focus on research. If it's business, or you combine it in a unique way. And another thinking here is that at conferences and opportunities, what we are doing are research findings, and then they should be in the value chains, and usually they will be in international collaboration or value chain. And like we are located in Europe, so but also Imran has experience from China, since you are a visiting researcher there, and you have some thinking probably about why you are doing this, and maybe some experience that it could create some opportunities on the international aspect.
Yeah, I think like basically one of the motivation for me to get this position there in China is because this kind of networking, it really enables us to solve a wide spectrum of research and development challenges. And because in China, the industry is quite big and quite mature, and the universities, they have certain resources. So the resources there, they are really useful to develop, especially for my project. And what I'm thinking is like, to expand this networking, you can utilize the expertise and resources from other collaborators and other networks, and with that you can solve the critical challenges that you are facing in your research and also in the industry. And I believe that it's very important to have a connection between academia and industry, so that the researchers who are very hardworking researchers, they know where to focus on. Because if there is a disconnect between academia and industry, then there's a lot of researchers who are doing excellent work, but it remains unnoticed. And somehow industry they never know about what's happening in academia. So in that sense, when you are collaborating, you are doing networking with industry and internationally, then you can join your hands, your forces together to solve the critical challenges in industry. So that really, improve your capability to solve those critical challenges that you're facing in the industry and also in academia.
Yes, but also I know that the academia and industry exchange is not always so good. And it's also in the question and answer from Dr. Masoud Yousaf, he points this out, that it's unfortunate that there are a little bit separate organizations, and they should be on similar. Mm-hmm. So, and I know from my regional activities that trying to get these together is wanted, but industries are a little bit secretive with their problems. So one thing which industry should be more is that they have open up about their problems. So they say that, oh, here is our problem, we would like to do this. And then researchers know about it, and then they could address their research more towards about that particular. So that is something which I hope will come more in the future, that industries are more open to showing what are their needs.
Can I just add that and answer Dr. Masoud's question? To my opinion, as he said, it's pity that university and industry are considered different organizations. That is pity, but they are different organizations. I mean, they have different aims, different goals. University provides education and provides, let's say, educated people. Industry is say, increasing the GDP, whatever. But I think that indeed there must be points of connection between them. And why is that important? What I believe and what was always missing, honestly, in my research, for example, I was writing the articles, I have 80 articles, and every time motivating why did we do this research, I was trying kind of to make it up, like, oh, there is a need for new energy sources, or there is a need for more blah, blah, blah. That was more or less true, but we were never sure in the need which exists, in that this is the real problem, this is the real trouble. And this is what industry have, but of course every industry has, let's say, more or less closed information, and they have kind of secrecy. So they don't simply go out and reveal that we have a problem with this process, please solve it for us. There are some programs for a connection from university and industry, and they usually help to communicate. And that's great. I think that's very well able.
Yes, I quite sort of agree with what Erik says, that people from the industry, they have the need to sort of make these needs clear to the academics. So you could have some academic researchers, professors who are doing excellent work, but they don't always understand the need. Now, we mentioned that why people go to conferences, and a lot of the majority of the students, the PhD students and the postdocs that go there, they go, they present, they meet some people, and the aim is that, okay, they'll work and they'll write some papers, and the papers will end up being published in some journals, and they increase their publication list. Then you've got some professors who go to the conferences, they meet up with others, and they write some research grant proposals, and they get some funding, and it keeps their research going for a couple of years. But I think there needs to be a platform where, a forum where these people from the industry come together with the academics, researchers, to discuss these and form a kind of an alliance, so that they understand what the needs are. So for example, like you can have some tool manufacturers, people who manufacture tools, and then you've got these people, academics, who are developing some surface coatings to go into these tools. So you could come up with the best coating in the world, but if it doesn't stick onto the tool material, it's no good. You know, if the adhesion is poor, then it's of no good. So I think that alliance, forming this alliance between the tool manufacturers or the coaters, is very, very very, very important. And the students PhD students need to be told that, look, okay, this is your work and you need these papers for your PhD, but there needs to be a bigger goal. You know, this work will contribute towards solving this problem.
Yes, and I think also here the communication exchange is very important, that we are talking about these things. And I have an example from these tools with the sticking surfaces that makes it stronger. So it was a research where they developed such type of thin film coating for tools so they could be used more times. And then they found a company who were supposed to test this. So they took this tool, gave it to the guy at the machine, and 1 week later they came and asked, how did it perform much better than before? No, he said, not. We're surprised. And then and this was because his instructions was to use this tool, use it 100 times, then change. So he was not informed about the purpose of this test and the communication. So then the result was due to that. So it was just an exchange of information which was lacking. So that's why I think this regional aspects that we have start to talk more about these things. And for example, I hope that this type of webinar, when we share these things, it will be spread out to more, and people can have use of them in different parts of the world, because this is now an international webinar. And sometimes we have Dr. Sudesh is pointing out there are research real problems revealed in the papers and so on. But sometimes the knowledge about that problem is another perspective or from before. So, because I know the other cases when we have had papers, then they don't know where to find the industry to use the findings. So both are right. You have some motivations from papers since before, but maybe they don't fit into our region because that was relevant from some other another country.
I like to highlight one thing that also I think awareness is very important, like for researchers. For instance, if they are doing some innovation in their labs, and often it happens that they do not know the value of their innovation. And sometimes it happens that they just publish papers in open access papers, like they just publish in journals, but sometimes it has a commercial value. And there is a possibility that they can work on their ideas, have a proof of concept, develop a business model on it, and have a spin-off from the university. So somehow I think there is a need for researchers to get education on this, that how can, so that they know the value of their innovation. Because the researchers, they are doing lots of innovations, but often it happens that they do not know how to, what's the value in terms of commercialization. So
Can I just add to that? That's a beautiful example, and I completely agree with that. What I would like just to add that that's not in case, as you said, like a negative case that we just, or that researchers just got published that. That's not that bad, in fact, because by doing this, they make this information public, and then it still can be used for, I mean, globally for the innovation, it can be used by any other company and so on, which is great. But of course, if you would like to keep it as yours asset, then you have to do the right steps in the right order, which you both know better than me.
Yes, but also if we put in the consideration that the findings we are doing, maybe they don't have immediate use this year or next year, maybe it's 10 years. And then actually the research paper will be the value when someone finds out that, oh, here they did these things 10 years ago and I need it now. So then the research paper will have its value there. So I think trying to find both ways how to publish, but then also take some steps, because no one knows how to commercialize something, but we need to meet some right people. And then I think like these business models and so on, they are nice, but it's formal. So the real thing happens the informal way when you meet someone at some point, and then you start to get inspired or whatever it could be. So that I think is more important than one really is thinking about.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Maybe two things about the idea. I think that it was a great example how the idea was underevaluated, but it's pretty often that the research finding is overevaluated, and sometimes it is a problem. I mean, because you have spent 10 years as a researcher on this let's say product, and then you bring something small from the lab and say like, look, this is something which cost billions. And you are sure that it cost billions because you know how many efforts you put in that, and you maybe see the potential, but it still will be the market which will decide it. For example, the example like the electricity, the electrical cars, they have been invented 100 years ago, right? But they actually get the life only several years ago. So it's not only what you got; it's more how is the need. It's more how market will consider that.
Yes, and also I think that once someone gets interested into this, then it should have some possibility, not only research findings. So there I think Imran's approach of systematic study is quite interesting, because then he spends a little bit more time on doing it systematically, which takes more resources and more time. So it will be frustrating from publishing point of view or so. So what do you think about that, Imran? What is your thinking?
Yeah, I think like because in literature it's quite vast, and somehow nowadays like the publication, there are lots of publications, and sometimes you really need to separate the speculations from the solid experimental evidence, and sometimes you also need to do experiments systematically to find out like what's things there. So in a way, I believe in these systematic studies, and then trying to see what's the potential of that that innovation that we are doing, and proceed accordingly. So sometimes if you have quite good results, then you go for higher impact journals. If you know that, okay, they are not so good, some incremental science, then you go to journals accordingly. So in a way, you need to know what is the potential of your innovation, and then you have to proceed accordingly.
Yes. And then actually one of important thing for those things is that you have different aspects from other disciplines or some other avenues and so on. So there I think this sharing knowledge is interesting. And we have here Mohammed Kampuch. So he's with us today, and he has actually initiated this online courses in order to create more exchange, because then we can actually, without needing to travel, because usually we need to ask someone to pay for our travel to some conference and so on. But here, if it's online, then it doesn't cost as much. So he has initiated that. And the good thing is that then you have different other disciplines which you can listen to. And I know he recently has had one round of this exchange. So can you please tell us a little bit about that and the users' opinion?
Thank you so much, Mikael, and thanks to the panel members, and thanks to Nasar for organizing such a very interesting event. Yes, about e-learning is something that started, of course, centuries ago, and it was known as distance learning. Now the new style of it is called online or e-learning. Industry-wise, it is something huge now. So e-learning is claiming 325 billion USDs by 2025. So, as NANOSMAT was one of the very known conference organizer in the field of nanoscience and nanotechnology, it is important that this organization will play its own role in this field. So hence we have decided to launch some educational programs, I mean like certified short courses, and so this is under discussion, and we are busy developing the content of these programs. Of course, conferences is the main activity, and due to this COVID issue, we have to think about virtual events. And we launched already NANOSMAT 2020, which is going to be an online event. So we started to receive submissions of abstracts and so. And hopefully there will be hundreds of participants. And actually this mode was regarded as something prestigious. But due to the current situation, I think now organizations are changing the way they are looking at it is now a must. And thank you.
Yes. So, so there we are all learning still what is the most useful for us and so on. So if any one of the participants listening to this discussion and so on have ideas about that, please forward that to NANOSMAT so we can try to follow the latest needs, because sometimes we think there is a need, but it's not particular need for some people or things like that, and especially when it comes to innovation and so on. So is there any more question from the participants? I don't see any in the chat. So feel free to ask a question either to your particular need or any specific.
Or they could direct specifically questions to Imran or Erik or myself or Mikael or anyone.
Can I just, meanwhile people are thinking, can also drop in one provocative question to the audience, so they can think about that too. And well, while they are thinking still, I would like just to give probably the bit alternative, or like some aspect on the idea thing. I think the worst thing can happen with you as a researcher is to stay with your idea, to live with your idea, to sleep with your idea for years. There are people like that. So it should be, I mean, you should deal with it as soon as possible. If that's only the idea, make the research, get a confirmation, get preliminary proof of concept. Once you have the proof of concept, it's still only the idea. I mean, and then you have to be aware, if you decide to make it your asset, you go for patent in that. Be aware, because you can patent basically whatever, well, what is not patented yet. But then the next question will be, the patent is not clearly an asset. This is something which protects your idea, but if you don't make directly money on this idea, or let's say on the product which is based on this idea, you will be losing money, because patent costs a fortune. It's hundreds of thousands of euros to maintain that, to protect it globally, and so on. So there is a no clear way in this.
Yes. And one experience I have is that actually we develop our ideas and we like them so much that we keep them. Yeah. That's our natural habit. But then at some point we should think that, oh, maybe this is better when we share it and we put it in this big picture. So one of my previous mentors, he said that if you own a gas station, would you like to own a gas station in a small city, or like this big oil company having shares in that one? So it's better to be having less shares, for example, in a big company, because then it will be actually realized into something instead of trying to keep it. So this is some of my experiences, that it is so difficult to release our learnings, but we should do that. But I'm also sure that once we are doing that thing, we will find a partner and we will be really strong together, and then we'll be a team, and then we will succeed by that. Here is a question from Abdullah Hakem.
Mm-hmm.
A general question.
It's an answer with a question, in fact. And I completely agree that the question is very general. Idea about the first researcher of green nanotechnology? No, not really. Not really. I don't know. I'm sure there was several of them.
And so on. But this is for the future, because one does not need to be the first, but the ones who succeed. And now when there is a climate need, and we have the energy, and again that 2013, all these needs. So I think that such type of thinking, green nanotechnology and so on, and in Europe we have the more green investments for SMEs and so on, which is now coming. So there would be fundings in those aspects. So this green thinking is more and more important. And I think maybe in the future, students who are smart, when they choose a topic, maybe they will choose something which has potentially green approach or sustainability approach, not the basic science question to address and so on. So this thinking will be coming more and more.
Yeah. Another question, I think, for a student, how can he get to expand his idea or his project if he is just a beginner with no money?
Yes, but at the same time, when one is a beginner, then you have a big heart and big passion for your idea. And it, for example, coffee does not cost so much money. So if you discuss these things with people over coffee, having exchange, then you can proceed. And it's not the money which is the most important. The most important is the network, and you position your thing. I had one good experience from since 10 years that we were a small group of researchers who were initially interested in commercializing, and we had some small step, but not really a company and so on. But then we started to meet every 3 months, sharing our different cases, and we discuss, and sometimes we have invitations and so on. So then we were beginners with no money. We still have no money, but by that exchange, we were able to move ahead, and then there were different opportunities appearing in different ways, which we came back and discussed in this group. So maybe finding some other students who are interested in these things, and then you form a group and test your ideas and having partnerships by that type. So then money is not needed until later. And another thing which I can recommend while we are discussing the research is to try to mature the research findings as much as possible. For example, systematic studies and so on, because then the research funding is paying for the development before you need to go to next steps, and avoid investors as long as possible. So this maturing and exchange, you can
I like
go
to add
along.
I like to add something here. So for instance, like I talk about this Aalto University, and probably there's something similar in other universities. So when you are working in a university, let's say as a PhD researcher or as a researcher, most of the cases, if you're associated with some projects, the rights belongs to the university. So if you have some innovation under some projects, so you need to do some invention disclosure. You need to inform. Usually universities or those research institutes, they have some departments where they are dealing with these innovations. So you need to report it there. And usually there is team experts where they are evaluating that what's the value of this innovation. And then if they find it a value, then there are different possibilities. One possibility is that you file the patent through this university, and then there are some government bodies. For instance, in Finland, we have TEKES, now it's called Business Finland. It's a Finnish funding agency for technology and innovation, and they give funding basically for proof of concept or for the initial funding to develop your idea. And another channel is like, for instance, if you have some ideas and you owns the right, you don't it's just your own idea, then one possibility is to participate in those events where nowadays there are many startup events. There are lots of business angels are participating, and where there are some other investors who are looking for good ideas to invest. And for example, there is actually now it's the biggest event in the Nordic countries, probably in the world, I would say. It's called Slush. So those events are very popular these days, where you can present your ideas, and if there are investors who find it valuable, they can give you some initial funding, and you can develop your idea further on. But it all depends on how mature is your idea. And I totally agree with Mikael that it's good to work on your idea first, try to check it quite critically, systematically, and when you see some value in that, then believe in yourself and make a good team. Making a team is very important, because for any successful business case, you need a team which is good in the content, like technically, but also business side. And often these researchers who are working on hardcore technical part, they do not understand the business part, which is very important for the success of any innovation. So I think developing a team, you need to meet people, do networking, and for that you need to go to those kinds of events where you meet, like the startup events are quite good example for this.
I think that at each place, wherever you're located in the world, there will be some type of events or some activity. Like I participated in a mentor for research program. And then I started to meet people, and actually my mentor was very useful for me. And then he became more and more involved into the startup company we had. So, and each place has some type of activity. So joining them is a very good. It doesn't need to be this slush or whatever. If it doesn't exist close to you, then you don't
just
go
add to both of you. I like what you, Mikael, said about investors that take, let's say, on board investor as late as possible, and that's very true. On the other hand, you should remember what is your asset in this case. You have, let's say, you have your idea, and you probably are the only man on this planet who is able to realize it. And the team, you need a team. If you want to make a business, no investor will invest money in one man company. No one. You have to make a team, because they want to, let's say, investors, they in Swedish it's riskkapitalister. I mean, they want to have a risk, but they want to at the same time have as low risk as possible. And no, they don't want to bet on you, the only horse, let's say. So the team is extremely important.
And actually that relates to the capacity, and that we need to do this, and it will take a long time. Whatever we do, it will take a long time before there is, especially if we come from the material, then it will take like forever.
But still,
having team is good
indeed
for the long-term aspect, and then we are stronger.
Yeah, just a short one. Absolutely agree. It will take a long time, and you still need some money to survive this running time, let's say. But that's what I was trying to say from the very beginning. Try to get the first customer as soon as possible. I mean, this is your main aim, and don't be happy with any money you got as a support from the state, because this is basically an injection support that you will not die before you be a real company. So the only money which counts, the best investments are money from the customers.
Yes, that is. So I think we have used 1 hour of time, so I don't see any more questions. And from our perspective, I think we can discuss this forever because it's so interesting.
Yeah, I think, yes, we have gone a bit over an hour, and we did say it'll be about 45 minutes to an hour. So I know there's a lot of people who have joined us today from Asia, so probably it's their dinner time, but I know one thing, in the UK it's lunchtime now, so I think we should sort of wrap up. And maybe, Mikael, if you could sort of summarize and your concluding remarks, and then we'll close it there.
Yeah, so I can immediately share, or because this type of discussion is useful, natural around the coffee table, like we are doing. I've been discussing with Erik before, and when I met Imran and so on, it was this type of. So this is quite normal. So I think this webinar thing can be working out. So I hope that the participants also feel that they have at least got some inspiration or started to reflect on some different things, because that is the main purpose. And if you have any ideas about this type of activity, or if you have an event where you would like to have this type of exchange in the future when you're creating, and if you feel that it could be related to nano, then we are interested to either support, or we can have it together or things like that, because this is a dynamic activity to share these things, and it should not be by only a few persons. It should be more persons doing that. So any feedback from participants is appreciated. So you have the NANOSMAT, and
I think we do have one question, and maybe we'll ask Imran to answer that, because he's into this energy field. Which will be the good topic in energy storage fields to begin as a new research for doctorate? Supercapacitor batteries.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I think they both are very good topics. And for instance, like batteries is a very good topic nowadays. Lithium-ion batteries were very popular, but nowadays sodium-ion batteries is a very good topic to work on. There are lots of challenges there, losses. So I would say like batteries is a very good topic, but at the same time, there are lots of innovations going on in supercapacitors. So I would say like both topics are quite good. And the idea is to like read some review articles on the topics, try to find out the key research questions, what are the key challenges there, and try to work on those. So I think both are quite good in my opinion.
And I can add on here that, for example, if that is an activity at the university close to you or so on, go and meet the people and see what they're doing. And what I do now when I'm older and more wise is that I actually follow people more than the actual technologies and ideas, because when we are a team which fits, then it goes really strong. So follow your interest more than what people tell you is good, because we don't know. But if you match up and you're devoted to a certain area, follow that one, because then good things will happen anyway. And also, just to remind, there will be a video of this one at the NANOSMAT YouTube channel. So you have found this webinar by a link, and also NANOSMAT is available on Facebook. and it has a YouTube channel. And if you don't even find it later on, then you can email and ask. It will not happen immediately because we need to prepare it and so on first. But the idea is that this content will be available afterwards, so one can have a look at it. And there will be other content about other things available. So this is available at the NANOSMAT homepages and channels and so on. So that is also, I have a personal request from Badmus about another event. So this is really great because it shows that there is interest. So you can have that address. So I think now we close the formal webinar, and we can still sit and have a discussion. But if some people would like to leave, they're of course free to do that. But so we formally now close this webinar, and I'm really happy for Imran and Erik to join this one and creating the discussion and having reflections on the different topics. And of course, Nazar, who has the foundation of a NANOSMAT platform and so on. And then Mohammed, who will have the e-learnings and other things, which I have learned from. So this was very nice that we could meet and have this first premiere webinar. So thank you, everyone, and all the participants.
Yes. Thank you.
I think people are asking for a link for feedback. Either I think we will email this to people so that we can get some of your feedback. But do remember that, as I said in my opening welcome address, that we will be hosting a series of these webinars now that we're in the lockdown. And due to this COVID-19 situation, we will continue to engage and discuss some very important topics relating to nanotechnology, nanoscience, and other emerging technologies. And the idea is to bring international people together to discuss these important ideas and to help people as well. Especially we have some students who are asking about which areas to go into, and energy is obviously the very hot topic. And there's a lot of interest in across the world in nano energy. So I hope everyone has found this webinar useful. And as Mikael mentioned, we have been live streaming, so we are joining people from who probably not have registered with us for this webinar, but have joined in this live stream on Facebook. And we will be uploading this video on our YouTube channel as well. But I think it's a very good way for people, international people, to stay together through this technology platform. Although we are trying to avoid human-to-human contact and we're changing the way people are working, a lot of people are working remotely now from home, but we're still able to engage and have these discussions, which is a positive thing. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will send you a link for feedback so that if you've got any questions or any suggestions, and this is all about exchange, as Mikael mentioned, it's about exchanging ideas, and hopefully we will develop and progress effectively. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nazar. Thank you, Dr. Mikael. I just want to add that this topic this time was great to introduce it, but then further in the next seminars we can be much more specific on specific questions. I think that would be also very interesting. Thank you for the chance.
I also like to thank Dr. Nazar, Dr. Mikael.
Now we have the video.
It's weird. I don't know what's happened, but it's working now. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Imran, you were speaking.
I was thanking you and Dr. Mikael for organizing this, and all the audience who were attending this webinar. So it was really nice experience.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.